"You're lucky I love you," I whispered as I leaned over, "or I would be so out of here." He smiled, a blazing grin that had every woman at the table swooning. CEO of Chicago's fastest-growing tech firm and son of a former senator, James Morgan isn't gorgeous, but that grin had landed him a spot on the city's most eligible bachelors list for 3 years running. Sadly, he wouldn't be eligible next year. Well, sadly for everyone else. "Another hour," he whispered. "Then Penny has instructions to phone me with an urgent message." Good. As charity dinners went, this one ranked about average, which meant somewhere between uncomfortable and excruciating. The cause was excellent: New Orleans reconstruction. The food was just as good, Creole by someone who obviously knew how to cook it, which meant it was heavy on the spices and not nearly as appreciated by the older crowd. Most of it got left on the plates, which had me looking around the sea of tables, mentally calculating how far that wasted food would go in some Chicago neighborhoods. But they'd paid handsomely for it, eaten or not, and that was the point. James's father had been asked to give a speech tonight. James was doing it in his stead. That happened a lot lately, as his father aged, to the point where the organizers would be surprised, and probably disappointed, if James Sr. showed up instead. So James was a guest of honor, which meant everyone at this table wanted to make his acquaintance, and he couldn't spend the meal chatting with his fiancé. While he conversed with everyone in turn, I entertained the others. Every few minutes his hand would brush my leg, sometimes a flirtatious tickle, but usually just a pat or squeeze, a reminder that he appreciated me being there. Finally, dessert was served, doughbosh cake, a New Orleans specialty, a 6 layers of chocolate cake with lemon and chocolate pudding between them. The meal was coming to an end, and conversation was hitting the stage of desperation. "So, how did you two meet?" asked the woman on my left. "Their families know each other." A man across the table answered before we could. "Mills and Jones department stores, James Mills Morgan and Olivia Taylor Jones." He sat back looking smug, as if he'd just uncovered a secret and somewhat shady connection. "Our grandfathers founded the company," James said. "Mine sold our shares to Liv's dad before I was born, but our families still get together a few times a year. Liv was always there, usually getting into trouble." A round of obliging laughter. The woman on my left patted my arm. "I bet you had a secret crush on him." No," James said. "She was 17 before she remembered my name." "Only because you look like your cousin," I said. "Who's a 1/2 foot shorter than me and 50 pounds heavier." James turned to the others. "Let's just say Liv's complete lack of interest kept my ego in check." "You were older," I said, then hurried to add, "out of my league." "Nice save, darling. Truth is, by the time she was old enough to notice me, I'd gone from a gawky teenager to a boring businessman. Liv prefers fighter pilots." I sputtered a laugh. He was a computer tech in the Air Force. Close enough. The point is, she wasn't easily wooed. I've launched hostile takeovers that were easier. James spoke after dinner, making an impassioned plea for donations. I would say it was a lovely speech, but that would be arrogant, considering I wrote it. I could point out that a master's degree in Victorian literature hardly qualifies me to write speeches about contemporary disasters, but I never did. If James was going to be my husband, I was going to be more than a bauble on his arm. I hadn't planned to marry so young. I'm not sure if I planned to marry at all. My parents had a great relationship, but, well, it lacked what